Unit 5. Diabolic. The police are searching for the diabolic murderer. Diffuse. The lighting was beautifully diffused throughout the room. Connotation. This word has a slightly negative connotation. Indictment. That is a damning indictment of our public health care system. Engulf. The flames engulfed the building in an instant. Modulate. The intensity of the light beam can be modulated. Inanimate. A stone is an inanimate object and does not move at all. Negligible. The transportation costs are negligible. Profane. Do not use profane language. Pretext. He took off from work under the pretext of going to see a doctor. Unruly. The police were called to calm down the unruly crowd. Pesky. A pesky mosquito bothered me all night long.
Dictate. Please don't dictate what I do. Ponderous. His latest book was ponderous rather than philosophical. Fidelity. Employees owe a duty of fidelity to their company. Inane. The actress was fed up with being asked lots of inane questions. Malign. The politician does nothing but malign his opponents. Insignia. The uniforms had the insignia signifying a soldier's rank. Convoluted. Her argument was too convoluted for me to follow. Emphatic. They were emphatic that global warming has been caused by humans. Mishap. The Queen's visit to Japan ended without any mishap. Embolden. He was emboldened by her smile many times. Snitch. He confessed to being a snitch. Sectarian. More than 100 people died in a sectarian attack.
Impermeable. Most modern building materials are impermeable to water. Exhilaration. The crowd was in a state of exhilaration. Prophetic. His novel later proved to be prophetic. Sullen. She looked sullen during the party. Stolid. The accused remained stolid even when he received a sentence of death. Clobber. He was clobbered on the head and required 8 stitches. Condolence. I offer my sincerest condolences to his family and friends. Protrusion. There were some metal protrusions sticking out of the wall. Senile. That patient suffers from senile dementia. Coalition. The Prime Minister formed a coalition government. Craze. Running has become the latest craze to sweep the country. Acquittal. The news of his acquittal surprised everyone.
Jeer. Fans gave a jeer to the player. Desolate. I saw a desolate landscape through the window. Inaugurate. She will be inaugurated as CEO next month. Dissonance. There is dissonance between their beliefs and actions. Equivocate. The Prime Minister equivocated when questioned on that subject. Spillage. She put the container in a plastic bag in case of spillage. Pivot. He was the pivot of the research project. Swill. He stuffed himself full of burgers while swilling beer. Robust. The company's stock rose on robust sales growth. Intangible. Intangible assets include patents and trademarks. Epiphany. Have you ever experienced any religious epiphanies? Delinquent. Those delinquent boys had similar backgrounds.
Naturalization. The athlete applied for naturalization as a Russian citizen. Abstention. The vote was carried with 20 votes in favor, 13 against, and 5 abstentions. Conjugate. I'm not sure how to conjugate this verb. Flippant. The audience was offended by his flippant remark. Omniscient. This novel is a third-person narrative and told by an omniscient narrator. Dainty. The lady waved her dainty lace handkerchief. Counterfeit. The criminal group was arrested for making counterfeit bills. Eclipse. The scientist's discovery has been eclipsed by the scandal. Morbid. The criminal of the case had a morbid fascination with blood. Luminary. He is known today as one of the luminaries of 19th century science. Slacken. The runner never slackened her pace to the end. Perseverance. This type of research requires significant effort and perseverance.
Obsessive. She came to have obsessive thoughts after the accident. Inertia. She couldn't throw off the feeling of inertia after her afternoon nap. Equilibrium. To keep the market in equilibrium is difficult. Perimeter. A security guard patrols the perimeter of the house constantly. Benevolently. He smiled benevolently and said everything was okay. Spree. The tourists went on a shopping spree there. Repudiate. Some members repudiated their party's policy. Irresolute. They were too irresolute to take swift action. Preoccupation. His preoccupation with power ruined his life. Swamp. The swamp attracts many migratory birds. Relinquish. The spokesman was forced to relinquish his position. Microscopic. The marine biologist is studying microscopic creatures.
Dispensation. He obtained a dispensation from military service. Jubilee. The Queen's Diamond Jubilee took place to mark 60 years of her reign. Buoyant. The country's buoyant economy is attracting foreign investments. Revamp. That nation needs to revamp its election system. Derogatory. The lawmaker made derogatory remarks about other party members. Matriculate. He matriculated at Harvard University in 1988. Mentor. She is acting as a mentor to school pupils. Conformist. The musician has long said he will never be a conformist. Facetious. I was scolded for giving facetious answers to the teacher's questions. Abyss. The company climbed out of its financial abyss. Satirize. The play satirized 3 of the most corrupt politicians of the time. Poignant. The old song brought back poignant memories of my family.
Condescending. Some doctors had a condescending attitude toward their patients. Cardinal. Respect for basic human rights is a cardinal principle of the Constitution of Japan. Scrimp. They scrimped and saved to send their children to college. Irate. I don't know how to deal with an irate customer. Shackle. Many African countries are shackled by huge external debts. Deplorable. The foreign minister has condemned the incident as extremely deplorable. Ambient. The ambient temperature should not exceed 20 degrees. Conciliatory. The country adopted a more conciliatory approach on the issue. Encumber. I was encumbered with a heavy camera and a thick guidebook. Superfluous. All software has superfluous functions. Mutate. It may mutate into a deadly virus that is transmissible from human to human. Outcry. The shooting incident triggered a public outcry.
Exasperate. Our teacher became exasperated at our lack of enthusiasm. Addendum. This report is provided as an addendum to the earlier document. Precipitate. Excessive drinking can precipitate health problems. Ebullience. He spoke with ebullience about his country's soccer team after their win. Morass. The country managed to get out of the economic morass. Deceased. Her deceased father left a large sum of money to her. Contemplate. You should contemplate your future. Warden. As a wildlife specialist, he has spent 20 years as a park warden. Buffer. The United Nations created a buffer zone between the two countries. Malice. That is a horrible crime committed out of pure malice. Stymie. The moving plan has been stymied by land contamination problems. Purvey. It is our responsibility to purvey accurate information.
Surmount. He had to surmount many obstacles to become a well-known writer. Conviction. Only 25% of these cases have resulted in convictions. Reprehensible. He is ashamed of his utterly reprehensible behavior. Suffocate. 2 men were found in a car suffocated to death. Confrontational. The country took a more confrontational stance against the international community. Matrimony. They were joined in matrimony last week. Prosecute. The politician was prosecuted for taking bribes. Impregnable. Her position as the leading figure seems impregnable. Beckon. A woman in a black dress beckoned the boy to come in. Racket. Our next-door neighbors were making a racket last night. Sanctuary. This wildlife sanctuary is inhabited by a wide range of birds and animals. Forfeit. The team forfeited the game because of a violent act.
Upend. He sat on an upended bucket. Jostle. 2 major airline companies are jostling for market share in that country. Revoke. He had his driver's license revoked. Obliterate. The building was completely obliterated in the tornado. Bestow. The king bestowed a medal on him. Courier. I will send the parcel by courier. Insolent. I can't tolerate his insolent behavior anymore. Servitude. A lot of people are in a state of servitude in that country. Culpability. He did not acknowledge his culpability. Constitutional. The freedom of expression is one of the constitutional rights. Dangle. The boy was dangling his legs from the high chair. Tantrum. She is annoyed with her son's tantrum.
Authoritative. This is the most authoritative book in the field. Snip. He snipped off the corner of the ticket. Absurdity. We couldn't help laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Grind. I ground wheat and made 3 loaves of bread. Fetter. The productiveness of labor is fettered by working conditions. Custody. The state took custody of the neglected child temporarily. Larceny. The man was arrested for grand larceny. Vanquish. He was vanquished by his rival in the competition. Mangle. His car was mangled in the accident. Agape. He just stood there with his mouth agape when he received an acceptance letter. Repose. The earthquake disturbed the repose of the small village. Skeletal. Birds share many skeletal features with dinosaurs.
Virulent. The virulent disease spread rapidly across the country. Tingle. The spicy sauce made my tongue tingle. Ebb. The tide is ebbing now. Stopgap. This is merely a stopgap measure to address the problem. Hush. She began her speech and hushed the audience. Predilection. My brother has a predilection for Latin music. Phase. She didn't seem to be fazed at all. Ram. The taxi was rammed from behind by a bus. Dribble. I accidentally dribbled some coffee on my shirt. Distressing. It is very distressing to read the report on the war victims. Prerogative. The royal prerogative has been exercised in the past. Seditious. She called for a revolt in her seditious speech.
Suffrage. She led the campaign for women's suffrage. Contravene. Their act may contravene the international law. Precedent. The judge's decision will set a precedent for future cases. Accost. I was accosted by a drunk on my way home. Obstinate. He is very obstinate when he wants to do something. Expiate. I would do anything to expiate my guilt. Graft. The article exposed graft in the government. Jinx. There seemed to be a jinx on the project from the beginning. Provident. You should lead a more provident life. Torrid. His latest novel is based on his torrid love affair. Succulent. They served succulent fruits as dessert. Verbose. Her thesis was unclear and verbose.
Bout. I always have a bout of hay fever in early spring. Digression. That discussion was a digression from the main subject. Ditch. I fell into a roadside ditch. Arbitrate. The UN arbitrated the dispute between the two nations. Fortitude. She overcame a lot of troubles with fortitude. Constriction. The political constriction is a characteristic of autocracy. Austere. It was an austere room with just a desk and a pair of chairs. Kindred. I don't believe in ghosts and kindred phenomena. Extort. They attempted to extort large sums of money from Ms. Miller. Pair. He pared an apple for me. Affliction. The loss of her dog caused her much affliction. Tally. You must keep a tally of what you owe.
Demean. The naughty behavior demeaned him. Reticent. She is reticent about her family. Reprieve. The murderer was reprieved from a death sentence. Catastrophe. The party was a catastrophe. The guest of honor didn't show up. The food was awful. Streak. The blue sky was streaked with thin clouds. Rumble. I heard thunder rumbling throughout the sky. Cryptic. A cryptic message was left on my answering machine. Onerous. We still have the onerous task of cleaning up. Proliferate. The use of smartphones has proliferated in recent years. Pandemic. Those countries are facing the threat of pandemic diseases. Subsequent. The event affected the subsequent relationship between them.
Smear. He smeared butter thickly on his toast. Wriggle. She wriggled out of the desperate situation. Extrapolate. We can extrapolate the result from this data. Personable. Her son is a very personable young man. Overdue. He paid a fine because his rental DVDs were overdue. Rundown. He gave us a brief rundown on the event. Detour. I had to take a detour because of a traffic accident. Entreaty. They would not listen to our entreaties. Unabashedly. She revealed her feelings unabashedly. Endow. Evolution endowed humans with flexible brains. Upscale. They went to an upscale restaurant on their wedding anniversary. Clump. I heard him clumping up the stairs.
Defector. The defectors had a meeting to form a new political party. Decipher. She succeeded in deciphering the old documents after a 20-year study. Shrug. He shrugged his shoulders and said he didn't know. Attuned. It took long for me to become attuned to the customs of the country. Exponential. The population of the city is increasing at an exponential rate. Splinter. The mother removed a splinter from her son's finger. Statutory. The statutory speed limit on this road is 40 kilometers per hour. Intractable. This book discusses the intractable problems with an aging society. Scanty. Information about the group is scanty at the moment. Affability. She is popular with everyone for her affability. Debar. He was debarred from driving a car for 3 years. Adversarial. Trials in that country are based on the adversarial system.
Scrutinize. They scrutinize the data for errors. Credulity. The company was accused of taking advantage of the credulity of consumers. Extricate. We extricated him from the dangerous situation. Articulate. He is a very articulate speaker. Trance. She worked in a trance all the night. Vociferous. He was known as a vociferous critic of the president. Foil. The terrorist plot was foiled at the last minute. Intervene. The government should not intervene in the economy. Invincible. The troops were viewed as an invincible army then. Cursory. Even a cursory examination reveals many fatal problems. Truculent. He is always truculent and often gets into a quarrel with someone. Facet. Our website explains every facet of Japanese life.
Addictive. The online game is addictive. Decree. The local government decreed that smoking be banned in public places. Resume. We will resume the conference at 3 p.m. Snatch. She snatched the letter from her brother's hand. Dart. He darted into the classroom just before the class started. Innuendo. The film was banned for sexual innuendo. Deplete. The development in the area could deplete underground water supply. Prolonged. The prolonged war left the region in ruins. Mutinous. He sometimes shows a mutinous attitude toward his boss. Slump. Sales slumped by over 30% last year. Apex. We at last got to the apex of the mountain. Twitch. His lips were twitching as he suppressed a laugh.
Data file. Phonology. Syntax. Semantic. Lingua franca. Inflect. Vernacular. Colloquial. Preface. Bibliography. Missionary. Prelate. Worship. Penance. Pagan. Esoteric. Requiem. Rampart. Chivalry. Inscription. Glyph. Recite. Stunt. Interlude. Effigy. Porcelain. Cathartic. Balm. Folklore. Maxim. Hunter-gatherer. Lance. Dynasty. Autocrat. Remains. Hearth. Flint. Dungeon. Concentration camp. Shipwreck.